Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. As you're probably aware, I get a lot of replays sent in. Most of them are pretty good. Some of them are absolutely amazing. Some of them, not so much. Sometimes I'm 2 or 3 minutes into a battle, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I watching this? It's not necessarily bad, but I can't see what's special about it. And sometimes it is actually kind of bad. And, that's fine. Because, let's face it, most of us aren't unicums. Most of us are never going to be unicums. The best that most of us can hope for is to just be an average player. And there's nothing wrong with being an average player. But average players make, average player mistakes. And when you come to watch a World of Warships video on YouTube, you probably don't really want to see an average player getting an average result and making average player mistakes, because if you want to see that, most of you are just going to play the game yourself. And this was one of those replays, at least at first. I started watching, and within a minute or two I was thinking, why am I watching this? There's absolutely nothing remarkable going on. In fact, and if I'm being completely fair here, Papa Erik in the USS Iowa, the US Navy Tier 9 battleship, he's not exactly going to be covering himself in glory here. I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. We'll see some edited highlights and then rejoin the battle proper when things start getting interesting. For a start, he consistently underleads his shots with the Iowa's 16-inch guns. The thing is, though, he does have some fairly good excuses. He's only just unlocked the Iowa. He doesn't even have it fully upgraded, although I'm not entirely sure. Possibly the engine upgrade? But it's not a fully upgraded Iowa. And since he's only just unlocked it, he's probably still coming to terms with the unusual ballistics of the Iowa's 16-inch super heavy armor-piercing shells. You do have to give these guns a little bit more lead than you might be used to, so that's fine. Papa Erik and I actually have a lot in common. We're both rather advanced in years, we're both in our 50s, and we're both military veterans. I was in the Royal Navy, and he spent his adult life in the Dutch Army as the gunner on a Leopard 2 main battle tank. Under normal circumstances, when I'm watching a replay where somebody's being kind of bad for at least the first half of the battle, I'm extremely reluctant to make a YouTube video out of it, regardless of how good it gets towards the end, because the internet can be very cruel and unforgiving of people's honest mistakes. And while I've certainly got broad shoulders, and I'm entirely happy to deal with any personal criticism, I don't really want to subject any of you to it. So bearing that in mind, despite knowing what you lot can be like, rather than just abandoning this replay a couple of minutes in and moving on to the next one, I was prepared to give Papa Erik a fair crack of the whip. Because like me, he's a silly old bugger, and, he's been around the block a few times, he's probably got broad shoulders, and also, like me, he spent most of his adult life in the military. So we've both been insulted by professionals. So you lot can do your worst. I'm sure we can both take it. So, now that we've both got our excuses all lined up, let's take a look at what's actually going on. And that means not focusing on Papa Erik, because he is going to have an utterly miserable first half of this battle. Instead, the two real MVPs of this battle, at least on Papa Erik's team, are two of the destroyers. Up to the north, in Cap Circle Charlie, we have the Schmaland, who's already managed to flip that cap circle and is preparing to defend it against seriously heavy odds for as long as he possibly can. And then down to the southwest, at Cap Circle Alpha, the Z-23, who's been doing his level best. He's never going to flip that cap, but he's been doing his level best to at least contest it and delay the enemy team from taking it. The enemy team do, of course, have the central cap at Bravo. About a minute or so later, Papa Erik, still struggling to get to grips with the ballistics of these 16-inch super heavy armor-piercing shells, but the Z-23 down to the south is taking a huge chance here. It's not that risky because there's no radar in play down there, but the enemy team does have a carrier. But the Z-23 has rushed into that cap circle after driving the enemy destroyer, the Tromp, off although the Tromp has just popped back up again and is probably shooting at him as he scoots around the island in the southwestern corner of the cap circle at Alpha, desperately trying to not be reset while loitering in that cap circle long enough to flip it, and it looks like he's about to do it, which is great news. Not such good news up to the northeast in Cap Circle Charlie, where the Smaland has been joined by a Hayati as overwhelmingly superior enemy forces push into that northern Cap Circle, but they are managing to get some resets off, and they're delaying the inevitable for as long as they possibly can. The Z-23 down to the south has done it. He's managed to flip that Cap Circle at Alpha. Unfortunately, and for no good reason that I can see, because the Z-23 had just flipped the cap for him, the friendly Schlieffen decided to also follow the same route into that cap circle, got subjected to a furious concentration of fire. In particular, and this is what actually ended up killing him, airstrikes from the Dutch Tier 10 destroyer the Tromp when he was in that narrow channel between those two islands and just couldn't manoeuvre to avoid them. The cap circle up to the north at Charlie has now been flipped despite the best efforts of the Hayati and the Schmaland. They are now just focusing on conducting a fighting withdrawal and inflicting as much damage as possible to the victorious enemy ships up to the northeast before they can turn their attention to the rest of the team down here. The team's Atago, the Tier 8 Japanese heavy cruiser, is attempting to flip that central cap circle at Bravo and trying to redress the points balance because the enemy team are now 100 points ahead. Unfortunately, he's about to get nuked by, well, amongst other things, the Megami over there, who gets the killing blow as he's tunnel visioning on the Atago and running straight into the retreating Iwami. So the only thing the Atago actually succeeded in doing was putting the enemy team even further ahead on points. Unfortunately, even though Papa Erik, well, it wasn't a perfect shot at the Megami. I mean, it could have been better. The Megami could have been a bit closer. But he was basically stationary in the water, broadside on, and the Megami is a notoriously fragile cruiser. But Papa Erik, still struggling to come to grips with the ballistics of these 16-inch super heavy armour piercing shells on his brand new USS Iowa, and fails to inflict a single point of damage on the Japanese cruiser. Meanwhile, the Z-23, fresh from flipping the cap circle at Alpha, is trying to succeed where the Atago failed and do the same thing at the central cap at Bravo, and he's having a fairly good stab at it. He's almost halfway there, but the enemy team obviously know that there's something there. The enemy Kiev pops up to the north, but the Z-23 can easily outspot the Kiev. The problem is not the Kiev itself, it's the fact that the enemy carrier's aircraft, also aware that there's somebody in that cap circle flipping it who needs to be spotted, is nosing around looking for a victim. He overflies the Z-23, spots him too late to actually conduct an attack on him, goes for the Neptune instead, but the mere act of spotting the Z-23 is enough to seal his fate, because he's now getting shot at by, well, pretty much everybody. Not just the Kiev, but also the secondaries from the Schlieffen. The Schmaland up to the north has managed to nail the enemy Z-52. That's a very, very useful kill, still conducting that fighting retreat, still holding the enemy team at bay. Unfortunately, the Z-23, as a result of being spotted by the overflying attack aircraft from the enemy Nakhimov, did end up getting taken out by the secondaries of the enemy Schlieffen. The team are now 200 points, 2 cap circles, and 2 kills behind. The Neptune, who was the victim of the Nakhimov's airstrike, the overflight of which sealed the fate of the Z-23, despite watching the Z-23 get absolutely hammered, despite being spotted by and hammered by yet more airstrikes, and despite there being at least 2 battleships within 10 kilometres of him, decides that somebody needs to flip that central cap at Bravo. And honestly, he's right, somebody does. I'm just not necessarily sure it should be him. Although he does have a smokescreen. And there isn't a radar over there. And he's out of range of the long-range German Hydro up to the north, so he might be able to get away with it. It's certainly a brave move, and the team is desperately in need of a hero right now. You just have to use that smokescreen and not fire your guns. Okay, you can fire your guns, you just have to use your smokescreen. Why are you not using your smokescreen? That's not a radar, Neptune, is it? It might be. In which case, why the hell would you drive into an open cap circle while being spotted by aircraft within range of multiple battleships? And oh no. Yep. Yeah, he's dead. As is the team's Jean Bart, which means they are now nearly 300 points behind and 3 kills behind. Although the team's MVP, the Schmaland, is once again flipping that cap circle up at Charlie. So they should at least have the cap advantage, and if they can just stop hemorrhaging ships and hold on to what they've got, they can turn this into a win. There's a lot of low health ships on the enemy team just begging to be finished off, like that Megami who's rushing into cover. Oh, there's the airstrike, double fire from the Nakhimov. It's fine. Can he get some actual effective shots on target? I mean, we're more than halfway through the battle now. He's only done 29,000 damage. Some kills are desperately needed at this point. Yeah, when I said kills, I meant kills on enemy ships. They've just lost the Hayate. Although the friendly Nakhimov has managed to finish off the Megami. So they did manage to come slightly ahead on points from that exchange, but they're going to need to do better than slightly ahead on points when they're 300 points behind, and they no longer enjoy that 2 cap advantage, because somebody is flipping the cap down here at Alpha. And it's probably the Trump. The team have just lost another battleship. The Bismarck is down, sunk by the Smolensk. The team are now 400 points, 4 kills, and a cap circle behind. The Trump, I'm assuming it's the Trump, I can't see who else it would have been, has managed to flip the cap at Alpha. This is really, really bad. A couple of minutes later, despite Papa Erik finally starting to land some substantial hits on the targets that he's shooting at, salvation comes not at the hands of Papa Erik, but once again, the MVP of this match, the Schmaland, who succeeds where the Hayati failed and sinks the enemy carrier. Celebrations, however, are extremely short-lived, as the enemy Kiev manages to torpedo and sink the Prinz Ruprecht. The team are still behind by 400 points, 1 cap circle, and lordy, look at the kill difference. Here comes the Nakhimov. Don't forget the Iowa has some of the best AA in the game. Don't forget this is World of Warships, so it makes absolutely no difference. That's cost him 10,000 hit points. I'm sure he'd rather not have lost. The only consolation is the Nakhimov doesn't get to do it again. It's 1 strike and you're out. And suddenly, a wild Iwami appears, giving a broadside to an Iowa at a range of 8.6 kilometers. Even Papa Erik can't miss that. He's actually inside secondary range. Can the secondaries finish him? I mean, you know, it's an Iowa, it's no Massachusetts or Ohio, but the Iwami doesn't have any health. It also looks like he doesn't have a heal. He's on less than 1,000 health. Come on, go gadget secondaries. He is taking fire, possibly from a Smolensk, or maybe that Trump. So he starts backing up. The secondaries did get it. And because Papa Erik wasn't interested in fighting more than 1 ship at a time and started backing up to avoid the barrage of fire coming from around the corner of that island, he's also able to avoid the torpedoes that were launched at him. With the range on those torpedoes, it's not the Kiev, that much I can guarantee. It may be the Trump. Probably is the Trump. It's not one of those Dutch destroyers. It does get torpedoes, 12-kilometer range. They're pretty effective. The Moskva. Oh, what is the Moskva doing? I thought the Moskva was stepping up and flipping the cap, because the team do need a cap circle, but no, he was passing through the cap circle through luck, not judgment. Instead of staying in the cap, hiding behind either of the 2 islands, butting into that cap circle and flipping it for the team, he's instead charging through the cap, straight into open water, straight into a crossfire from the entire remainder of the enemy team, is not taking the cap circle, giving the enemy team yet another kill, and putting them at over 900 points. The Kiev, however, has made a critical error of judgment. Not watching where he's going, sailed straight into the wreck of the Iwami, and now he doesn't know whether to go forwards or backwards. He's firing his guns when he could easily have survived this by just not and going undetected. Papa Erik swings those 16-inch rifles around, unloads at the Kiev, probably didn't actually realise the Bismarck was there, does now, gets the kill on the Kiev as this enemy aircraft gets shot down in the most spectacular fashion, and the secondaries claim the double strike on the Bismarck. Hooray! Papa Erik, I think everybody will agree with me when I say it's about damn time. But let's not celebrate too soon. You're still 1 kill, 200 points, and a cap circle behind. The Schmalen's doing what he can about the cap circle, and he's smart enough to know that he needs to remain undetected. The rest of the enemy team, with 2 minutes to go, are sitting on a 200-point lead. The only thing they need to do to win, even if the Schmalen flips the cap, is nothing. So naturally, they continue attacking. Papa Erik nails the Smolensk. Now with the kills at parity, they're only 150 points behind, they have 2 cap circles. But with less than 2 minutes remaining, the enemy team will still win by just holding on to their points lead. So naturally they continue attacking. To be fair, I think the lead that they have is kind of slim, and not everybody has the luxury of taking out a points calculator in the middle of a battle. But still, I mean, there's attacking, and then there's attacking. Watch this, Frederick the Great. You've got to get those rear turrets firing, so let's swing the ship around and show broadside to an Iowa at what is point-blank range for an Iowa's 16-inch guns. An Iowa who is not showing broadside to you. So it's extremely unlikely that all of those guns are actually going to get you a kill. Oh, the Schmalen torpedoed you. To be completely fair to the Frederick the Great, I mean, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he knew the torpedoes were coming, so he was turning to try to avoid them. But it was a case of bug it if you do, and bug it if you don't. He was either going to get citadeled and deleted by Papa Erik, or torpedoed and sunk by the Schmaland. We can't conclusively say that his mistake was turning to give broadside to Papa Erik or sailing into the Schmalen's torpedoes. We can conclusively state that his mistake was continuing to attack when all he needed to do was turn around and run away. Because Papa Erik's team are now ahead on points, kills, and caps with less than a minute to go, and they still have a carrier, which is going to be incredibly bad news for that Frederick the Great, which has put Papa Erik's team more than 100 points ahead, and now they don't need to chase after and kill the rune. All they have to do now to win is absolutely nothing. So absolutely nothing is exactly what they do. Papa Erik, a, let's face it, Joe average, slightly over the hill military veteran, having an extremely rough time getting used to his brand new shiny USS Iowa. I think, if I'm being completely fair here, we can probably all agree that while the team would have lost without Papa Erik's contribution, they wouldn't have won without the Schmalen's contribution. He was definitely the MVP of this game. And shout out, of course, also to the Z-23, who had a big impact in the early stages of the battle. But hopefully it does go to show that there is some hope for all of us, even the most average of players in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing when it matters, can turn the course of any battle. Of course, it doesn't hurt your chances if for no good reason whatsoever the enemy team suddenly decide to all start wearing their pants on their heads and suffer sudden and fatal rushes of shit to the brain. But being in the right place, at the right time, doing the right thing, regardless of how average your performance has been thus far, certainly helps too. So Papa Erik, well done, eventually. And that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you're all having a great day. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.